Good evening. So we are going to read a little bit more, but this time is about missing time. UFOs and missing time, which would indicate an abduction has taken place. So I do want to touch on this again, I do. And it's coming from chapter 8. And let me pull this up over here. Let me get this going. We got it. Just give me a moment. Hello, Applebrooks, honey. Weldon, Ald, Marcy, Lori, Aaron, Frank, Cooper, honey. Jessica, Con, Jackson, Eugenia, Marcy. Hello, you all. So, I gotta wait. I'm gonna make sure I get this off of here so I can watch the comment section, y'all. Okay, we're good to go. We're good to go, and my nose has started itching. I don't want my nose to itch during this. Okay, Gina, honey, please, just let's get it going, y'all. This might be a little lengthy, but, oh, you see that orb flying around? That's lovely. I love that orb. Okay, missing time. Can you all hear me? I'm glad you got a notification. By the late 1960s, the day of contactees preaching intergalactic peace and harmony appeared over. Reported contacts with alien beings became terror-filled experiences involving kidnappings, experimentation, and missing time, yet also filled with awe-inspiring revelations and potence. Somewhat ominously, these contacts no longer happen to be people out in the desert or on a lonely road. Now the phenomenon was taking place as people slept or sat in a perceived safety of their own homes. On the night of January the 25th, 1967, Betty Anderson, now Betty Luca, described as a simple, unsophisticated country girl, was in her home in South Ashburnham, Massachusetts, along with her parents and 7 children. When the lights flickered and then went out, the family saw a curious pink light shining through a kitchen window, which pulsated and grew brighter. Her father, Wano Aho, looked out the window and saw a small Halloween freaks hopping along in line. All of the family members except Anderson became immobilized and lost consciousness. Anderson was shocked to see 4 small beings advancing in line through the closed kitchen door. She described them as small creatures with large pear-shaped heads, gray skin, small slits for ears, nose and mouth, and a large wraparound cat-like eyes. She said they looked like Mongoloid people and wore dark blue uniforms. Eagle-like insignia. So they had a dark blue uniform with an eagle-like insignia on the left arm. Her daughter Becky later had a conscious memory of the visitors before she too lost consciousness. Through nonverbal communication, apparently telepathy, Anderson learned the group's leader was called Kwazaga, who indicated they knew her name and were there for her particularly. After some conversation regarding the safety of her family, Anderson gave Kwazaga one of the family Bibles, and he presented her with a small, thin blue book filled with symbols. Anderson was asked if she would go with the creatures. Being a devout Christian, she kept asking if they were men of God. They did not answer this, but they said they had come to help save the world, which was trying to destroy itself. Sensing no hostility, Anderson allowed herself to be floated inches off the floor, passing through the closed kitchen door along with the group. Outside, she was taken aboard an oval UFO resting on struts. On the underside of the craft were 3 large balls similar to those reported by the abductees and depicted in the Jord Adamski photos. Once inside, Anderson was asked to disrobe. After donning a white robe, she was given a medical examination that included a long needle piercing her navel. When she asked the purpose of the exam, she was told it had to do with creation, that there were some parts that were missing. Interestingly, Andresen had undergone a hysterectomy some years previously, and during the examination, Andresen was treated very much like a medical patient. One of the creatures told her, "These things won't hurt you. Just lie still, very still." She said during this ordeal, something was removed from behind her eye with a long, flexible needle. After the exam, Andresen said she was allowed to dress and then taken down to what seemed like an underground corridor, to a room where she was enshrouded with a translucent canopy that soon filled with thick gray liquid or gel. She was told to keep her eyes closed and breathe through the tubes. She then felt that she was transported to a different place. Later, under hypnosis, Andresen declared, "I've left this earth. I believe we were in space, and somehow I believe we were in the center of the earth." Now, how can that be? How can you be in both? Author Raymond E. Fowler, who chronicled Betty's saga, noticed that during the entire experience, Betty felt somehow under their control. He wrote their polite requests created an illusion of free will, but in reality, she found that her choice always corresponded with their wishes. Her willpower seemed mesmerized by powerful influences beyond her ken. Andresen's experience took yet a stranger turn as she claimed to be escorted into a world where the atmosphere was vibrating red color, and strange lemur-like creatures with eyes on stalks climbed around on a stucco-type buildings. Next, she passed through a green world with vegetation like Ezekiel. Andresen was unable to identify or even describe some of the sights. Under hypnosis, she said with a sigh, "We are stopping because there's something white here. There is something white. I don't know what it is. It's something like I can't ever explain it." She said she soon arrived at a city with large crystals hanging in the air. One pyramid-shaped building had sculpted a face at its apex that looked sort of like an Egyptian head. She was brought before a large living bird. She could see it breathing, with a bright light behind it. This was to be the high point of her experience. Under hypnosis, she described the scene. "I'm standing before that large bird. It's very warm, and that bird looks like an eagle to me, and it's living. It has a white head, and there is light in the back of it, real white light. It's very, very hot here. The bird, the feathers are just fluffed out. The light seems so bright in back of it. It's beautiful, bright light." Believing herself to be in the presence of God, Andresen was filled with fervent emotions. One of the creatures told her, "Your own fear makes you feel these things. I can release you, but you must release yourself of that fear through my son." Andresen said she cried out, "Thank you, Lord. I know I'm not worthy. Thank you for your son." Suddenly, the huge bird disappeared, and in its place was a fire with a heat that hurt Andresen. And from the ashes of the fire came a large gray worm. This obvious symbolism troubled author Fowler, who wrote that the phoenix-like bird was not a readily discernible spirit or aspect or a symbol of modern Christianity. However, Fowler was surprised to find an encyclopedic notation that the phoenix figures prominently in early Christian art and literature as a symbol of immortality and the resurrection. Andresen then was taken back to the craft. again immersed in a syrupy gel and transported home. During this time, the leader, Quasagah, also told her his group had come to help the human race. Love is the greatest of all, he told Andresen, adding because of love they could not allow man to continue in the way that he is going, and that it would be better to lose some than to lose all. Quasagah said it would be easy to hand man the knowledge of life, but that he is not yet worthy and must seek such knowledge for himself. He also indicated that Andresen was only one of many humans in his group or clan that they had taken. Finally, she was told, "Child, you must forget for a while." Under hypnosis, Andresen asked if the aliens had any hand in the notorious power blackouts of 1965. She indicated they had caused it for purpose of revealing to man his true nature. They have powers, she said. They can control the wind and the water and even the lightning. She said, the visitors explained that the blackouts were caused to show man his true nature, namely that man seeks to destroy himself through greed. Everything has been provided for man, simple things. He could be advanced so far, but greed gets in the way. Other worlds are involved in a man's world. Man is very arrogant and greedy, and he thinks that all worlds revolve around him. She claimed to have been given information that 70 different alien races, some come from realms where you cannot see their hiding place, some come from the very earth, have been working for betterment of mankind on earth since the beginning of time. These races all work together except for one that is an enemy. Once home, Andresen said she kept the small blue alien book for about 10 days, but that it had then disappeared from her closet. She said she had been told that she could not keep it long. Due to the outlandish or high strangeness, as some call it, of Andresen's story, 12-month investigation was launched by the Center for UFO Studies, which included interviews, hypnosis, background and character checks, and the use of a lie detector and a psychological stress evaluator. The 1972 Psychological Stress Evaluator, PSE, analysis report on both Andresen and Becky concluded they were telling the truth with regards to the 1967 incident. In the opinion of this analyst, the results are conclusive. Betty's story was first published 12 years after the incident, leaving little room for argument that it was concocted for profit. Andresen's hypnosis was conducted by Dr. Harold J. Edelstein, director of the New England Institute of Hypnosis. Dr. Edelstein concluded that both Andresen and her daughter, Becky, truly believed in the truth of their story. During deep trance hypnotic regression sessions, Andresen and Becky relived their traumatic experience in great detail, noted Fowler. They each expressed the natural apprehension, fear, wonder, concern, pain, and joy. Their facial expressions, voice tones, and tears were obviously genuine. In considering the religious connotations of Andresen's experience, Fowler considered that Quasagah may have paid lip service to Betty's religious convictions simply in order to ensure her compliance. He also mused that if the entire trip was stage managed by the aliens as a reward for Andresen, it is not conceivable that they might have picked a symbol, which is the phoenix, that was obsolete by some 1,500 years. Such speculation led Fowler to wonder, could it be possible that visiting extraterrestrials might in actuality be interstellar missionaries? In an introduction to Fowler's book, CUFOS, the director, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, wrote that the Andreessen case revealed how surprisingly complex the UFO issue had become. The man on the street's simple opinion that either UFOs are all nonsense or that the visitors from outer space do exist is brutally destroyed by close study. He stated, adding, "Those who still hold that the entire subject of UFOs is nonsense will be sorely challenged if they have the courage to take an honest look at the Andreessen book. For whatever the UFO phenomenon is or are, it is not nonsense. It would take an imagination of the highest order to explain the reported happenings described herein as mere misidentifications of balloons, aircrafts, meteors, or planets. Neither is there the slightest evidence of hoax or contrivance." Interesting enough, vocal debunkers Philip Klass and Curtis Peebles failed to address the Andersons case in their books. They did give space to a 1973 incident involving two Pascagoula, Mississippi, fishermen who claimed that they were abducted and given a physical examination by aliens. Charles Hickinson, 45, and Calvin Parker, 19, both shipyard workers, and that on that evening of October 11th, they were fishing on the Pascagoula River when they heard a zipping sound, then saw three small beings exit from a glowing UFO hovering nearby. The creatures, described as 3 feet tall, with gray wrinkled skin or covering with slits for eyes and claw-like hands, floated over and took the immobilized men aboard their craft. Inside, both men were scrutinized by a football-shaped device that resembled a large eye. After the exam, which lasted less than an hour, the men were returned to the river dock. Sheriff Fred Diamond questioned the pair and stated they were scared to death and on the verge of a heart attack. A tape recorder was left running while the pair were left alone, yet their demeanor did not change. One was heard to cry out, "God help me, don't let me die." They were even examined unsuccessfully for radiation at nearby Kessler Air Force Base. Investigator Dr. James Harder from the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization, APRO, arrived and concluded the experience of Hickson and Parker was a real one. It was not a hallucination. With Harder was Dr. J. Allen Hynek, by now the head of the Center for UFO Studies, who concluded there simply is no question in my mind that these men have had a very real, frightening experience. Hickson and Parker became celebrities, appearing on a number of radio and TV programs. Debunker Philip Klass soon arrived in Mississippi, and the clash of mindsets began. Klass argued that operators of 2 nearby toll booths had not reported any UFOs that night. Next, Klass denigrated the polygraph test that depicted the men as truthful because he claimed that the operator was inexperienced and not certified with the lie detector testing. Klass also noted minute discrepancies in Hickinson's story, such as first calling the aliens' mouth a hole and then changing it to a slit. And of course, Klass hauled out the old standby charge that the men concocted their story for money. This latter charge was strengthened when the local attorney Joe Kalingo signed a contract to handle all publicity for the pair. However, in 1987, when the vice chairman of the British UFO Research Association, BUFORA, John Spencer, visited Hickson, he was instantly impressed by his obvious sincerity and honesty. Spencer quoted Hickson as saying, "I was offered all kinds of money to let them do a movie. I declined. I am still declining. Making money is not what this experience is all about." This same clash of viewpoints, also involving lawmen, Lie detectors, psychiatrists, believers, and debunkers, was soon visited on another well-publicized abduction case with predictable results. Unlike other abduction cases, this one had 6 witnesses, and the abductee was reported missing at the time with no hypnosis required to bring forth details of this experience. I think I still got some missing time, y'all. Let me look at this. Let's see how long this is. Because, okay, yeah, we got it, y'all. We're going to continue it. We're still talking about the missing town. How we doing over here? That's perfect. We're doing great. Walton's missing days. Travis Walton was a frisky 22-year-old on November the 5th of 1975 when he and 6 other men were returning home to Snowflake, Arizona in a large truck following a hard day of clearing brush in the Sitgreaves National Forest. Walton loved adventure, and he was a bungee jumper and a race car driver. He even once said that he would be willingly going in a UFO if he got the chance. He got his chance. Shortly after 6 p.m. that day, as the workers drove down a rough logging road, they said they saw a UFO hovering about 100 feet away. Walton told his boss, Mike Rogers, to stop the truck, and then he jumped and ran out toward the glowing golden object. Suddenly, a bolt of bluish-white light flashed from the UFO, knocking Walton back into some brush. His companions raced off in a panic. After about a quarter of a mile, they saw a streak of light in the sky. Believing the UFO had departed, they returned to check on Walton, but he could not be found. So driving to Heber, Arizona, the workers told their story to the Navajo County Sheriff, Marlin Gillespie, who was understandably skeptical. Nevertheless, several fruitless searches for Walton were mounted over the next few days. Suspecting that a homicide might have been committed, the 6 workers were administered a lie detector test on November the 10th by C.E. Gilson of the Arizona Department of Public Safety. The test on one of the workers, Alan Dallas, who first spotted the UFO, was inconclusive. Dallas said he was too upset by the experience to respond correctly. But author Philip Klaus, reminds me of Charles Schwab or something, never know, noted that some latter Dallas was charged with the theft and may have flunked his test due to the fear of incriminating himself. As to the other 5, Gilson concluded these polygraphic examinations proved that these 5 men did see some object that they believed to be a UFO, and that Travis Walton was not injured or murdered by any of these men. And if an actual UFO did exist and the UFO is a man-made hoax, 5 of these men had no prior knowledge of a hoax. Early on November the 11th, Walton came home from a telephone booth near Heber and shortly was able to tell his own story. He said the beam of light from the UFO in the woods knocked him out, and when he regained consciousness, he found himself in a strange room. In pain, his first thought was, "Thank God I'm in a hospital." But then he looked around and he saw 3 small humanoids dressed in one-piece coveralls. They had bulging, oversized craniums, a small jaw structure, and an underdeveloped appearance of their features that was almost infantile. Walton recalled their thin-lipped mouths were narrow, and I never saw them open. Lying close to their heads on either side were tiny, crinkled lobes of an ear. Their miniature round noses had small oval nostrils. Later, he described these beings as overgrown fetuses with large eyes. Panicky, Walton picked up a device like a glass rod, was considering attacking the trio when they hurried out of the room as though they could see his intent. Wondering, he made his way through what apparently was the spacecraft, wandering into a dome-top room containing a chair and a console of sort. Walton noticed that as he approached the chair, one wall became increasingly translucent, revealing stars against the blackness of space. Suddenly, he was confronted by a man standing in the doorway. Walton said the man was more than 6 feet tall, muscular, with coarse, sandy blonde hair that covered his ears. The man wore a blue one-piece suit and a transparent helmet. This man, with piercing gold hazel eyes, did not speak but motioned Walton to follow him. Walton was led through some sort of airlock and into a large hangar-like area that contained 3 small saucer-like craft. He was then taken into a room and dressed identically to his guide. Walton said all 4 looked alike in a family sort of way, although they were not identical. Walton laid down on a table, and the woman approached him with what looked like an oxygen mask. The next thing Walton remembered was waking up on the highway outside of Heber and seeing a bright circular object rise into the night sky. Exhausted, Walton was fully dressed but discovered he had lost 11 pounds during his missing 5 days. While law enforcement officials quickly lost interest in the case, UFO researchers did not. Funded by the tabloid The National Enquirer, an investigator for the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization interviewed Walton and arranged a meeting with 2 psychiatrists and a polygraph test. Administering the test was veteran examiner John J. McCarthy, who learned that Walton had experienced with drugs and had been convicted of stealing and forging payroll checks for 4 years previously. With this in mind, McCarthy said he believed that Walton was holding his breath, attempting to sabotage the test. McCarthy then concluded, based on his reactions on all charts, it is the opinion of this examiner that Walton, in concert with others, is attempting to perpetuate a UFO hoax, and that he has not been on any spacecraft. Jeff Wells, an Enquirer reporter, described Walton during his time as mute, pale, twitching like a cornered animal. Supporters said Walton, like Dallas, was suffering from shock and failed to respond appropriately on the lie detector test. Others saw his condition as a nervousness over a concocted story. Even doctors differed in their opinions, probably reflecting their respective mindsets. Lamont McConnell administered a Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory test that showed no deviations that would point to psychosis. Dr. Gene Rosenbaum, one of the psychiatrists who examined Walton, told ABC News, "Our conclusion, which is absolute, is that this young man is not lying, that there is no collusion involved and no attempt to hoax." However, psychologist Lester H. Stewart, who saw Walton about 9 hours after his return, claimed to have seen fresh puncture mark on the man's arm, which he initially ascribed to his UFO trip. But as Walton returned to normal, Stewart became convinced that Walton had been on a drug trip and that his abduction was a hoax. Friends and neighbors, including at least one clergyman, continue to support Walton and say that for all his foibles, he is telling the truth. None of the 6 workers with Walton that day have confessed to a hoax, although the media pressure and payments offered to do so have been significant. In February of 1976, a composed Walton, along with his brother and mother, passed a second lie detector test administered by George J. Pfeiffer. Predictably, other polygraph experts differed with Pfeiffer's interpretation of the test results, and debunker Klaus declared the positive test should be written off since it indicated a truthful response when Walton declared he was not a UFO buff, although he had spoken about UFOs at length with his family. Would everyone who simply discussed the Civil War with their family members describe themselves as a buff? This kind of pettifoggery does little to determine the truth of such situations. of such situation. Blah, I can't get it out. Such situations. Klaus's more serious objection to the Walton story was that Walton may have concocted a hoax to get his employer out of under Forest Service brush cleaning contract, which was already running behind schedule and facing heavy penalties. Klaus also noted that Walton admitted watching a TV movie, The UFO Incident, concerning the Hill abduction, contended that if the contract could not be completed due to the outside circumstances, then no penalty would be applied. According to Klaus, this is exactly what happened. But while the situation provided a credible explanation for a hoax, it was not proof that such a hoax took place except for those predisposed to the idea. Travis Walton's ensuing media adventures did not convince detractors of his veracity. In 1978, his popular autobiographical book, The Walton Experience, was published. Then in 1993, his book was turned into a $15.5 million film, Fire in the Sky, which starred actor D.B. Sweeney as Walton. The movie itself stirred much controversy, particularly among the UFO researchers concerned with its sinister scenes of aliens in the ooze-covered room. The thing that's disturbing about the movie is that they would take such liberties and still call it a true story, commented Dr. James Harder, the APRO investigator who first obtained the Walton story under hypnosis. I don't think he, which is Travis, would be a willing party to the distortions. And according to the writer Quindorth Johnson, the movie's producers, in a deal with Industrial Light and Magic, they requested an alien setting that differed from those depicted in the CBS TV miniseries Intruders, which aired about the time of the film's release. The film's script writer, Tracy Tomei, stated, "There is no script that I ever wrote that has that sequence that you see on the screen in it. My script was virtually identical to what people read in Travis's book." A new Travis Walton book was published in 1996 to counteract the negative publicity surrounding the film. All of this, of course, opened Travis to the charge that he made up his story for profit. The same allegation made against the Pascagoula fishermen, and in response, Travis commented, "Looking at the positive, I have to say I've learned a lot about people and about humanity. It's given me some real insight into the people and the kind of contortions that their reasoning goes through when confronted with something that they cannot accept." This applies to any controversy. When people have an emotional stake in what's going on, it really skews their reasoning. My feeling is that you'll be a much more effective person if you can face the facts as they are. I'd have to say I've learned a lot about some of our institutions and the quote-unquote experts from my experience. In 1977, shortly before Travis Walton published his first book, filmmaker Steven Spielberg released Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which set the standard for UFO themes, such as government secrecy and strange encounters, as well as the appearance of a diminutive aliens with oversized heads. From this point on, adding in the TV abduction movies, debunkers would claim that all alien contact stories showed similarities simply because the witnesses shared these common cultural connections. While worth considering, this argument did not address all cases, nor did it explain the reports of alien interest in reproduction that occurred long before any popular presentation of that theme. So again, I'm reading from a book right here, Alien Abductions. I picked it up at the Peddler's Mall one day when I was looking for a children's book to read because I was doing story time with Gina, and then here's the receipt from it. You can see it. Gina, honey, it's upside down. Come on, you all. Let me get it on there. So I got it from the Peddler's Mall, and it was something hardback book, $8.25, and you can see the date. I got it April the 16th of 20, whatever. That was the book. It was just sitting there on the shelf. It's all by itself. So there is missing time. People have experienced it. I have experienced it. I can't remember what mine was about, although I was 9 months pregnant with my daughter on Highway 101 in California. I lived in Monterey Peninsula, and I went to see my sister-in-law when my brother was in the Navy. They lived over somewhere, I don't know, I had to drive 2.5 hours, maybe 3 or 4, and my husband stayed home because he was studying for his testing at the Presidio of Monterey. We had one vehicle. I went to see my sister-in-law early in the morning, and I thought, well, I'm going to leave. I'm going to get home before it got dark. So I think I left her house around, I don't know, 2, had some lunch and left. And I didn't make it back home until 10:30 at night. And my husband said, where have you been? I said, I got lost. He said, for 4 hours or 5 hours, your mother's been worried sick. The last thing I remember was going down Highway 101, and I saw the sign, Monterey Peninsula, and I thought, I don't live on a peninsula. And then the next thing I remember, I saw the great big bright light like this coming straight at me, like this. Big bright light, right like that, came straight at me. And I thought, oh, that's about right. Now I was riding my Mustang. I thought I'm going to fall. That's it. I'm going off the side of the mountain on Highway 101. It came right at me, and I jerked the wheel. And then I made my way home. I was 9 months pregnant with my daughter. So, y'all, that was wild. That people have missing time. They do. And some people have a memory of it, and some people don't. But I'm sure if people went under hypnosis, they'd pull a lot of information out of people. That's right. Thank you, Exotic Eternal. I like reading it. I really do like reading. I loved it when I was younger. Lived next to the library in Charlestown and by the elementary school, Jonathan Jennings, and then Pleasant Ridge Elementary. That's when I saw my first UFO. When I was young, up in the sky. It's like a blue, a green, a red light hovering over my head. And then I ran in the house because it kind of scared me. And then a few hours later, we walked to Pleasant Ridge Elementary School with the neighbors. And I thought, I'm going to swing on a swing, because they had great big long swing sets with great big long swings. And I was swinging as high as I could, and there was that UFO up there in the sky. It followed me to the playground. And my mother said she saw it too. So that was my first experience. But I used to live by the library, and I loved to read books. I go read the little children's books. So I hope you all like that. Oh, William, that's wonderful. You all please give this video a thumbs up. Because this is real world events. It's like, it's real experiences happening to real people. And you know they're not making it up. And if they were making it up, why you got to have all these agencies? Why you got to get the CIA involved, the FBI involved? Why you got to have the people to immediately try to debunk these stories? No, it's all real. It is. And I really did like that. I did. I liked how that one went. Because it was explaining things, and maybe you all have seen what they've seen. I have heard people talk about those blue suits. Have you heard them talk about the blue suits? Have you experienced wearing the blue suits? Okay, because some people have. They wear the blue suits, being on the craft. All of it, you all. Oh, it's great. It's wonderful. So I am going to go, you all. I'm sure there's plenty of people on here who have things they could tell about missing time. Lots of people. And seeing UFOs. We all didn't see nothing. We all saw something because we remember it. And we experienced it. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people. So with that being said, thank you for your comments. Thank you, Apple Brooks Honey. If there's any other moderator on here, thank you. If not, thank you all, the other moderators, if you see this video. And thank you all for your comments. So with that being said, hello, wherever you are in any part of the world. Hello. From my heart to yours, love you. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And thank you once again. Love you.